Well, we'll go back to some of the changes over the years. You would have seen quite a few characters come through the station on their way to other places, I suppose.
Oh, yes.
Yes. You'd have a few interesting stories around those.
I've got to be careful, though, haven't I?
You do. Are there any that you can share with us at the moment that won't get us both into trouble?
Oh, dear. I can think of a few stories, but some of the people involved might not appreciate me sharing them with you. No, I think I'll pass on that one. There's plenty of material there, I can tell you, but a lot of it would be actionable, I think.
Yes, interesting stories, but not for you.
Yeah.
Alrighty then. Well, we'll move on to the music that you've been playing over the years. Has your taste in music changed at all?
Not really. No, somebody's asked me that, and I really think that because I've played. So, for example, I used to do a Sunday afternoon program on 3MA in Mildura, and we used to play all sorts of things, including, for example, at appropriate times, the Hallelujah Chorus. You know, we play Handel, we play classical stuff, and so I've always had what I'd call a Catholic taste in music, in the fact that I love the early Rolling Stones. I love some of their early stuff, not so much their recent stuff, but the classics, you know, Jumping Jack Flash, all that sort of thing. But by the same token, I like Chopin, well, some of his stuff anyway.
Shostakovich, perhaps.
Yeah, all that. Wagner. I mean, I know it's not fashionable in some places to like Wagner, but I like a lot of Wagner.
Have you ever been tempted to play Wagner on the radio in the morning?
No, I think maybe in Mildura years ago on a Sunday we may have played the Ride of the Valkyries, but not a lot of Wagner. But I like Wagner, but some of it. And I find that I like some of a lot of things. I like some of Frank Sinatra. Some of Frank Sinatra I don't like. Etc., etc. You know, Elvis Presley. Love Elvis Presley. And some of the moderns too, like the very up-to-date stuff. But so my taste in music is almost a nothing taste. It's just a lot of things.
So with your taste in music, do you hear some songs some mornings, or do you see some songs coming up in the playlist some mornings and think, I'm sick of that song, don't want to hear that for the next few weeks, and just not play it?
Quite often. Yes, but then you've got to realise this, that you're not playing the music for yourself. For yourself, you play the music you want to hear at home. When you're in a commercial radio setup, you play whatever the programmer has done, and hopefully you know that somebody out there, and a lot of people hopefully, do like that song, so I don't impinge my taste. I don't put my taste on top of theirs, you know.
And so then if you do play that song, though, that you've heard 15 times in the last week and you're sick of it, as you were saying earlier, you're not going to come out of that song and say, I don't think I want to hear that song again for 3 weeks. Yeah. Because there's going to be someone out there who's then going to ring you straight away and say, well, I want you to play it again 15 times.
Yeah, I occasionally make a comment like, you know, you hear the Tremolo's an old one there, silence is golden. And you said, so why are you singing? But, it's not really so much a critique. It's just a smart alecky radio announcer's thing, you know.
And I don't think anyone would take it as a critique. Well, someone probably does somewhere. You'll always find someone who'll think you're critiquing something when you're not.
Well, I can remember, you know, and it applies to other things. I remember being in Mildura one stage when, during grape harvest, and when all the guys were out on the blocks there doing their what used to be all dried fruit then, playing Johnny Mathis, Let It Rain. That was what was on the thing, and Blake rang me up, very, very abusive. What do you mean, let it rain? We're in the middle of harvest here, mate. And I said, hang on, it's not going to make it rain, you know, it's just a song. But that does happen, yeah.
It's funny, really. It's like people... I suppose it happens more when we're kids than it does when we're adults. But people who think that the people who tell you what the weather forecast is on the TV or the radio, they obviously control the weather.
Yeah.
And so then when they come on the next night and they say, well, we did forecast the rain, but it was sunshine today, so we do apologise for that. And you think, they obviously must have slept today or something. They just didn't push the right buttons to make the rain fall. Yeah. If only it were that simple. Especially in rural areas like this, there'd be a lot of people who would like you to be able to control the rain.
It's extremely big. I mean, getting wet in Collins Street is one thing. Getting wet when you don't need it in haymaking time is something else.
have there ever been times out here when you've thought, well, we're in the middle of a drought, or we're in the middle of the rain that's about to flood if it keeps raining? It would be great if I could just change the forecast, just to if you had some control over the weather.
I asked a director of the Water Commission years and years ago about that. He was a Rotarian, and I said to him, John, I said, would you like to be able to do that? And he said, no, I'd leave that to God, thanks. He didn't want the responsibility.
See, I suppose no matter what you do there, you're going to annoy someone.
Of course.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah. If you were to leave radio, and from sitting over this side of the desk, I look at you thinking you're someone who will be in radio for as long as you can be. I might be wrong about that, but you strike me as the type of person who'd probably stay in radio for as long as he could.
Well, probably, yeah. I think while I've got a voice and while I've got a job, that's always the same. That's always the bottom line, really, in a commercial situation. Do they want to employ you? And if they don't, well, they'll tell you very quickly. Apart from that, I can't see any reason for quitting unless I lose my voice or something terrible happens. Yeah.
But if you were doing something other than radio, what would you like to do?
If I were doing something else, I'd love to be able to play very good golf, which I can't. But there again, I mean, that's all relative because there are a lot of very good golfers, but there are a lot of very, very, very good golfers. So if it were a career, you have to be extremely, extremely good to make a living at it. But no, perhaps write a bit.
I've noticed that you quite enjoy interviewing authors. Is that?
Yeah, well, yeah, they're always fun, especially the ones who'll talk to you. They don't all want to talk to you,
That beeping in the background is probably an off-air alarm somewhere, I assume.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
You can't hear it?
There might be a bomb somewhere.
It's entirely possible. Yeah, there's only 2 times I can think of that I've been down here, and that alarm's worked. It was the first time I came here. I came in on I think it was the Sunday afternoon, just to have a look around the studios, have a check to see what news was available, and got great shock. The bloke who was here before me, because Graham, the normal newsman, had 2 weeks off. I was covering the second week.
Yeah.
Rob Harrington was here
the
week before, and he left me this note saying, well, there was no news when I left. That was a great shock for me for my first time here. But while I was here, there was a storm going on outside, and the station went off air in the middle of it, and everything was still working in the studio, and the off air alarm was beeping at me. It wasn't off to a great start that day, and I think it worked that week, and I don't think it's ever worked any other time I've been here until now, and so. Now it starts working again, right in the middle of an interview too. Where were we? Right, authors. You enjoy interviewing authors. You said that if you weren't in radio, you might like to write a bit. Have you considered writing a book?
Yeah.
What would you write about?
I've got one I've been writing for years, actually, but
okay.
I can't sort of...
You can't give away the details, and someone else might write it anyway.
Yeah, well, it's a bit harder to classify, actually. It's got a bit of everything in it, but that's... hopefully I'll finish that. But I've got a couple of good ideas for novels, but it's a discipline thing. And I remember reading years ago Mario Puzo, the man who wrote The Godfather, and of course before he became famous as the author of The Godfather as a novelist, he was a very, very much employed screenwriter. He wrote all the scripts for the Superman things with Reeves in it, and a number of other things. Did a lot of screenwriting. And he said 2 things. He said, if you're going to write something, don't talk about it, do it. And he said the other rule he had was, if you're going to write something, don't consult another writer and read it to them, because he said they'll change it. Everything you do, they want to do it differently.
Yep.
But he said, above all, he said, don't talk about it. He said, well, once you start talking, he said, you lose the desire to write it, which I thought was quite interesting, actually.
Yeah, I've found that myself with some of the blogging that I do. I find that if I go and I can write these amazing blog posts in the shower.
Yeah,
I'll stand in the shower and disturbing visual for everyone listening, I guess. But I'll stand in the shower and I'll go through all the details in my head. I'll have this thousands of words all written, and then I get out of the shower and I think, I should write that down.
Yeah.
Never happens.
Well, then, of course, the other thing with writers, and this happens to Bryce Courtney or a lot of these very successful blokes. Courtney told me this. He said, I'll write, 30,000 words, and I look at it and I think, this could be Codswallop. Who's going to read this? He told me that one day. Yeah. Well, obviously he's wrong because a lot of people read it, but he said, at times I think, is this any good or not? Who's going to read this? Yeah. So that's always a drag on a writer.
Mm. Well, I suppose we'll before we go, we'll go through a few quick questions. Hopefully they'll have short answers, but if they don't, they don't.
Okay.
So we'll see how we go. First thing, so what's your favourite thing about Denny?
Well, the people, nice people, good climate generally. I mean, okay, we've had 11 years of drought, but I mean, that's not par for the course. At least I hope it's not going to be. Good. It's, you get a good summer, you get a good winter, lovely autumn usually. Nice people. Everything an ordinary person like me desires is here. I mean, you've got all the facilities you need, and they're all within striking distance. And the lifestyle, fine.
Yeah, I was being a bit flippant earlier when I was talking about cinemas, because every time I come down here, I think, while I'm down here, I might like to just go to a cinema and just see a movie. And where I live in Canberra, you go 10 minutes, and there's a cinema there. And so I come here, and to me, it seems sort of slightly foreign that I have to drive for an hour to get to a cinema. But then I sit back for a little while and I think about it, and I think that's one of the charms of the place, is that there's a lot of things that are right on your doorstep. Yeah. But then there are a few other things which are a little bit further away, and it makes them feel not so much as if they're difficult to get to, but they're more of a treat. Yeah. It's sort of, I might like to go to the cinema. I need to dedicate some time to it. There is something to be said, I think, for a lack of convenience to some extent.
Enjoy the trip.
Yes. And people in Canberra think I'm nuts. I'm one of these people who at 3 a.m, when I can't sleep, will go for a drive. Yeah. Out here, I've done that a few times out here, and then there's people back in Canberra who'd say, "But what about the kangaroos? They'll jump out and they'll attack you, and they're evil, and they're going to be angry with you, and they're going to try and destroy you." Well, you just have to know your surrounds, and you'll probably hit one at one stage, I suppose. But if you know your surrounds and you're careful about where you're going, then it's well.
You'd be surprised the number of people who do that for recreation, go for a drive in the middle of the night. To Anthony Hopkins, for example, I remember seeing him on an interview program years ago, and they said, "What do you do for recreation?" He said, "I get in my car and drive." And the interviewer said, "Where?" He said, "Anywhere." He said, "Quite recently, this was just after he'd made Silence of the Lambs," and he said, "I got in my car. It's a nice car." He said, "And I drove from Hollywood or from Beverly Hills," he said, to Dallas. And he said, when I got to Dallas, he said it was dark. He said it was coming on evening, and he said, "Oh, well, I better find somewhere to stay." And he said, "The Dallas that you see on the on the TV glosses," he said, "it wasn't like that. It was a drizzly evening." And he said, "I found this pretty down market motel." And he said, "I went into the motel," and he said, "It was down market." He said, "The lady who was on reception had her hair in curlers, and she was doing a crossword in the paper." And she said, she looked up at me and she said, "Oh my God, it's Hannibal Lecter." Yes, coming in out of the dark. It's Hannibal Lecter. And the interviewer said, "What did you do?" He said, "I bit her on the neck." So people do funny things for recreation. Well, unusual things maybe.
People who are in the acting profession, they would, especially when they do have roles as notable as Hannibal Lecter, it must be very difficult for some of them to disconnect from that role. I mean, they know they're not that person, but I think, for example, of Nigel Hawthorne. The Queen thought he really was a public servant.
Yeah, I could believe that too. So I'm afraid.
Do you find that when you go out and about to places that people say you're that man from the radio, and that's the thing that they're interested in more than
No, not really. No. They might say, "God, it's a bloody awful weather forecast you gave this morning." I get that comment quite often.
All right. This shows my little bit of lack of discipline. Back to the questions. Strangest thing about Denny?
Strangest? It's got a very interesting history, you know. For example, we've got a beautiful, absolutely magnificent central garden, the Waring Gardens, with, as you know, it's got a beautiful water, fountains, beautiful trees, shady trees, lots of nice lawn. That originally, I had to do some research some time ago for a couple of pieces I was writing for the paper about the history of the Edward and the Edward River particularly. That was a sort of flood mitigation area where the excess water was sort of trapped in what is now a beautiful garden. And at one stage, back in the 18-whatevers, it was a trap for a few other things too. There was a big lot of stagnant water and cholera outbreak, which killed quite a lot of people, actually. And the other thing which I only discovered quite recently was that, and this will mean nothing to somebody who doesn't know the town, but Napier Street turning into Cressy Street on that corner and going up to about Edward Street, I think you'd say, there's a row of shops, obviously, and under those shops is a tunnel.
Oh, really?
A tunnel which goes from there again, it means nothing to unless you actually know the topography of the town, but from, say, the George Street corner of Napier Street, going on to the right angle turn into Cressy Street, and then up to the ANZ Bank, the old ANZ Bank building. There's a tunnel under there, which was utilised, and I didn't know this until a couple of years ago. A lot of the respective shops have blocked off, have walled off the sections of that tunnel. But initially, I believe it was a security measure so that people in those shops could bank in the bank without having to go above ground. They just wander around there and, Ned Kelly was around in those days, and there were a few old bushrangers around. So it was a security device.
Well, we think of Ned Kelly, and I mean, Jerildery's only 1 hour from here.
He probably came through. He was in Echuca, certainly. So, yeah.
And these days, if you're going from Jerildery to Echuca, you'd probably come through here. So
why not?
Yeah, I often think about people who are going banking from the shops, especially the Dixon shops in Canberra, where I do spend a little bit of time. And in the afternoon, you can see all these people wandering about from the shops going to their banks. And you think, there's got to be a better way to do this.
Well, they had that idea a long time ago. Underground,
yes. Underground tunnels. That's it does sound like the plot for a movie, doesn't it? Just
it does.
The bushranger in the tunnel just waiting.
Yeah, well,
this isn't the topic for your novel.
Well, in those days, all he had to do was get into one shop, didn't he, and then wait for the other blokes to come out with their money.
This isn't the topic for your novel by any chance.
No, okay. Not at all, no.
All right. You've interviewed a lot of people on the radio over the years. Who was your favourite person to interview?
Well, a lot of them. I mean, Matthew Riley's always a lot of fun to talk to. Bryce Courtney, those sort of people. Peter Watt. But the interview I recall that I enjoyed a lot, and I enjoyed a lot of others too, or two actually. One was Slim Dusty, who wouldn't talk to me. He was he and his daughter Annie were obviously doing a publicity interview for a new album that they'd done together from EMI. And Annie Kirkpatrick she was great. She was talking to me, and I couldn't get Slim to say more than yep. And I thought, I've got to get this guy talking. So I had been told, and anybody who has encountered this will know what I'm talking about. He recorded The Man from Snowy River, which goes for just over 7 minutes, years ago, and he got it in one take. No rehearsal, just bang. And they got it down first go. And I thought, I have to get this bloke talking to me. And I said, Slim, I said, can I ask you something? Is it true that you recorded The Man from Snowy River in one take? After that, I couldn't shut him up. Because he realised that I wasn't big-noting myself. I was really interested in what he did. And he told me the story. He said, Baz Thornton, his lead guitarist, he said, Baz, we better get this thing down as soon as possible, otherwise we'll be here for a fortnight. And rehearsing, trying to get it word perfect. And he said, we did actually get it first go. And he said, it's got that fresh quality about it that you get when you get something like that first go. So that one. And the other one I really enjoyed because it was an unusual interview. This particular man came up to Denny to do something for Apex. I forget what it was now. He was a German ambassador, Dr. Hans Schauer. And I had to submit a list of questions before I spoke to him, to his secretary. And I told her more or less what I was going to ask him. This was before the wall came. Well, the wall had just come down, so the reunification of Germany had just happened. And apart from those obvious questions, I thought, you've got to put a couple of unusual ones in there. And I said, well, at the end of it, if it's okay, I'd like to ask him if he would sooner be the ambassador to Australia or Franz Beckenbauer, the German coach. And she said, you're going to ask him that? And I said, well, if it's okay. She said, okay, right on. So anyway, we did the interview, and at the end of it, I said, and it was a real kick because it's the only time I've ever interviewed somebody who had to call him Excellency. And I said, Excellency, I said, now, just a deep and meaningful question to conclude with. Would you sooner be the ambassador to Australia or Franz Beckenbauer? And he said, He said, I think being a diplomat is a rather more secure job than being a national football coach. He's a real fun guy.
What would be your most memorable, unusual moment on air?
Falling off my chair. We had a chair with wheels, which was pretty unbalanced. It was pretty lethal sort of a thing. And you mentioned Tony Smith a bit earlier. We're doing an agricultural program. And I leaned forward too far on the chair. It flew away from under me. But with great presence of mind and lightning reflexes, I grabbed the desk in front of me, but I couldn't stop myself, and I went straight under the desk and kept talking. And Tony almost wet himself. So,
who would be the most memorable person who's come through the town while you've been here?
Well, a memorable guy that I had a little bit to do with, and he was a terrific turner. He's no longer with us. He's gone to the big stadium in the sky, but was Teddy Whitten. And Teddy came up here for a benefit for a fellow who'd been very badly injured playing football. And he was working for Adidas at the time, and his staff at Adidas had arranged the interview for 10:15 on this particular morning. And I thought, well, I better ring him up beforehand. So about an hour earlier, I rang and said, Ted, is it okay? And every second word began with an F. What? And I said, what's going on? He said, I've been to Perth. Yeah, I've just got back at about 2 o'clock in the morning. He said, I haven't had any sleep. I tried to get some sleep. And those girls, pausing for the added words, have booked this up for me, and I didn't know anything about it. And I said, well, that's okay, Tom. We won't hold you. That's okay. I've got a fallback position. We won't do it. No. We'll do the interview. By which time we weren't on the air, of course. And I thought, this is going to be interesting. So anyway, 10:15, Julie rang him up about 10:13, said, okay, Ted, we're ready to go. Yes, I'm ready to go with the gaps, you fill the gaps in yourself with the very colourful language, and I thought this is going to be a nightmare. So anyway, at 10:15, I remember saying, well, now we have a very interesting guest in our program this morning. It is Mr. Football himself, Ted Whitten. Morning, Ted. Good morning, Paul, and how are you today? He didn't put a foot wrong, never said anything out of line, and went through the interview perfectly. And then when it was finished, I put some music on, and I got back to him, and I said, terrific, Ted, that was a super interview. Oh, was it? all the words came out again, and I thought, wow, he's a real pro. Anyway, he came up, incidentally, just to give him a bit of to salute him, because he's a terrific bloke, quite apart from the colourful footballer. He drove up from Melbourne that night. He probably spoke for 3/4 of an hour at the Denny RSL Club, told some very interesting stories, and then went off stage. And I went round the back to say ta-da to him when he went, and they said, he's gone. So he drove up from Melbourne, so a 4-hour drive. He did his 3/4 of an hour, and he drove back to Melbourne that night, immediately after he'd finished, and no money changed hands. It was all on the house as far as Ted was concerned. Wow. Great bloke. Bloke.
Yeah. Just thinking there about that interview you had with him, It's one thing that struck me about a lot of people in the radio industry as well is that level of self-control, in that off the air, the language can be very blue, but behind the microphone, almost without fail, it's clean.
Yeah.
And it must be, you would have seen a few people come through who would have had incredible self-control to be able to do that, stay clean on the air.
Well, I probably haven't got that sort of self-control, but I've never sworn on the air, and I don't make a point of swearing anywhere. Actually, a long time ago, somebody said, "Son, always treat a microphone as live." And I've always worked on that one.
There are a few politicians who could do to learn that, I think.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. And finally, 50 years in Denny next year. Anything special planned?
No. Not at this stage.
Should we start planning?
I don't know. But no, not at this stage. I don't think I've got anything special to do, but who knows? That's a while away yet. Next March, actually. So
about a year from now?
And about a year from now, yeah.
Well, off the air, I'll see if I can get the date from you, and I'll see if I can book some leave in advance to come down here and wish you a happy 50 years in Denny. I'm sure the people of Denny absolutely love you. In fact, I know they do, because I talk to some of them sometimes when I'm down here, and never hear a bad word about Paul Dix. Even people who've left the town that I speak to never have a bad word to say about you, Paul. Thank you very much for being on Samuel's Persiflage. A pleasure and an honour to have you on the show.
Thank you, Samuel.
And that's Samuel's Persiflage for today. Hopefully it won't be another 4 years before we have another episode. That's how long it's been, Paul. Used to be sort of semi-monthly, but other things got in the way. But it's great to be able to have you on the show. If you do have an email, a question for me, a question for Paul, send them through to podcast@samuelgordonstewart.com and I'll answer it, or I'll send it on to Paul. And, well, if we do have an episode before another 4 years goes by, you might just get your email read on the show, hopefully. That's all for this episode. Hopefully we'll see you again next time. Until then, I'm Samuel Gordon-Stewart. Ta-da. Samuel's Persiflage wishes to thank the good folk of Radio 2QN in Deniliquin, especially News Director Graham Munson, for providing the use of their studio facilities for this episode of Samuel's Persiflage.